We are able to squeeze this thing a little harder and get more juice out of it. But it's like, it really is like, you got to stack multiple ways to do that through data, through tech, through innovation, through genetics. And if you do that, then you see a 1-2% increase in your yield. And over the course of a couple hundred acres worth of material, it ends up being millions of dollars.
What's up, guys? Welcome back to another episode of The Dime. I'm Brian Fields. With me, as always, is Kellen Finney. And this week, we've got a very special guest, Micah Anderson, CEO of LEEF Brands. Micah, thanks for taking the time. How are you doing today?
I'm doing good. Thanks for having me, guys.
Excited to have you here. Kellen, how are you doing?
I'm doing really well. Really excited to talk to Micah. Really excited to dive into California and the whole country. And I mean, I'm just grateful we got a West Coaster on the podcast. You know what I mean, Brian? How are you?
Yeah, I'm excited. Listen, there's a lot of opportunities for us to talk about some really fun topics, and I got nothing. I can't even try to mislead Micah from an East Coast standpoint. Maybe we can ask about the uncle and some of the family members, but it's fair. East Coast, West Coast, Micah, if you got to choose a coast, which one you taking?
It would have to be West Coast.
Perfect. Let it be. So
the best.
That part out just get cut out. So before we dive in, can you give our listeners a little background about yourself and how you found your way to the cannabis space?
Yeah. So my name is Micah Anderson, CEO of a company called LEEF Brands. We're an extraction company based out of California. I got into the industry at a young age in California. I grew up in San Diego, surfed professionally when I was a kid and did a lot of traveling around the world. I say surf professionally, but I didn't make much money, and I had this little side cannabis hustle on the side. So my dad grew a little weed in the backyard. I sold some weed. I was traveling a lot, trying to do this tour called the WQS. Back then, and while I was traveling, I ran into these guys in a little island called Tavarua in Fiji. And this was like early, like 1994-ish, somewhere around there. They were weed growers in Mendocino County. And they suggested that I come up and check it out. And I did. So on one of my trips back into the States, I went up there and fell in love with the place immediately. I got busted my very, very first time ever in Mendocino. It's kind of an embarrassing story, but I got arrested with 30 pounds in the trunk and a few plants, and sat in the Ukiah jail for a couple of days. And when I got out, my dad came up and bailed me out, and we went straight to the real estate agent in town. And I was like, Dad, I'm buying property up here. I love this. This is amazing. And so that's kind of how, on the professional side, how I got into it. And it's been, a long 25 plus years since then. And so long story short, I built a bunch of farms up in Northern California and kind of did a bit of everything. I had retail locations in San Diego and LA, some delivery locations, and had my whole family involved with the business. And once Prop 64 came around, I shifted everything that I was doing from the nonprofit world of Prop 215 into the license structure, and figured out how to win licenses and talk to city council members and go through that process. Won a set of licenses up in Mendocino County in a little town called Willits, and built a fairly elaborate extraction facility, which is really the core of our business today. And we can kind of get into it in the conversation, but over the last 8 years roughly that we've been running the business, I think we did what everyone did in the very beginning. It's just everyone thought that they were going to get rich and do it all. And we're going to have brands and we're going to have this, that, and the other. And it's all going to work out perfectly. And we've learned through bumps and challenges and mistakes that it's really, for us, it's better to be super laser focused on what it is that you're good at. And we found that that's scaled extraction. That's our core focus.
I think that's really perfectly said. And I think there's a lot of companies out there that could probably take a page out of that book and recognize that, like, focusing and doubling down on what you do best, but sometimes that's a humbling challenge to figure out on their own. So let's start with why did you choose extraction in the beginning, and how did you figure out that was your core focus?
Yeah, I wish I had a better answer than this, but it really came down to myself and the other partners that I started the company with. Our backgrounds were really in cultivation. We had farms and distribute, like sales and stuff too, but really we were farmers, and we all had a bunch of farms at the moment. And back then, concentrates, this was in the early days, oil was $20,000 a liter. And that quickly slid backwards, but we wanted to try something new and exciting. One of my partners, Gary, who you guys have met, he had more extraction background than any of us. I had a little closet room in Mendocino where we messed around with some things, but never anything that was like a core focus. And yeah, we were excited by it. We're like, let's go do this totally different thing. And, you know, egotistically, we thought that we knew all the farmers and it would just be easy to find material and we'll just rely on everyone that we know and bring it all over here. We'll turn it into extracts and we're going to sell oil for $20,000 for the rest of our lives. And it's going to be easy. So, but that's the real reason. That's how we got into it. It wasn't necessarily like a big strategic, the industry is eventually going to shift this way. And we did a deep study on alcohol and, you know, that's not really how it went. It really just was like a gut instinct. And we won the licenses and found the money to build the facility, and it's worked out to our benefit, honestly. So it was the right move, but it was just more. That's the real reason why.
Those first partners, though, right? Taking that chance on was it relationship based, saying, "Hey, we've got this facility now. Like, give us some product. We can help turn it oil." Is that how that started early on in order to kind of get your feet wet and get the building rolling?
Yeah. Yeah. We leveraged a lot of the relationships, people that we knew. You know, when we first started, trim was selling for anywhere for like $100 to $150, you know. Frozen pounds weren't even really like a thing yet. Not the way they are now. You know, the rosin category hadn't really started to grow and live resin hadn't really started to grow. So really in the beginning it was distillate. That's what we started with. And then we started adding different extraction lines to what we do. But yeah, I was just leaning on the farm. Some of it was from our own materials, the stuff that we grew. But one thing about extraction that I don't think people really understand or put enough thought into is that it requires a ton of material to end up with a few small handful of jars, right? So you think that you know all these farms, and today we would need every single farm in Humboldt, Mendocino, Trinity to sell us 100% of everything that they grow. And it still wouldn't be enough. Like that's how much material we run. So you end up having to build a procurement team and be all over the state of California looking for enough material to run. But in the very beginning, it's like absolutely how we did it. It was like literally me, Kelly, and Gary driving around to farms that we know and like sticking arms in bags and trying to figure out how do we test this stuff for pesticides and yeah, it was fun, exciting times.
Was the plan always to kind of just be like a wholesale processor, or did you guys have like aspirations to start your own brand? Like talk us through like the early day vision and kind of how it shifted as the market changed.
Yeah, no, in the beginning we were going to do it all. And we were going to be the best at it. And we did. And yeah, no, we were like, oh, we're gonna eventually grow. It's all gonna come in here. We're gonna trim it. We're gonna sell the flower to, you know, whoever we can sell the flower to. We're going to have a portfolio of brands. We're going to get into all the retailers. I mean, we really thought we were going to do it all. In the beginning, we actually, prior to us winning the extraction business, we started with a brand called LEEF Organics. And we started with this brand and we got it into a handful of stores, relationships that we had, guys that we knew that won retail licenses. This is like the very, very first days of Prop 64. And we leveraged some of those relationships. We got the brand in. We did like 700 grand in sales. And then we won the extraction license and started building that. And for the first, like, call it 4 or 5 years of running the business, that we really did. We thought we were going to do it all and have all these brands and all these different things. And for a while we did. And we ran into, you know, the challenges that everyone else runs into where, you know, the stores aren't paying and your supply chain isn't shored up on the back end. How are you going to be consistent with your pricing and your quality? And it's really hard to focus on that many different things at once and be successful at any of them. So we ran a business where we were like 45% efficient on any of it. And eventually got to the point where we had to make this real painful decision where it's like, guys, we got to make a decision. Are we brands or are we an extraction business? And, you know, after we all sat around the table and talked about it for a couple of days, we decided we're an extraction business. That's what we're good at. Let's focus on that. And so we divested some of the brands. We wound them down, pulled out of all the stores. It was brutally painful. Like we were in like 700 stores. So we had a good distribution network, but it was killing our business at the same time. This is another thing that I learned the hard way was that I didn't realize in the early days, you know, my cannabis career, you could afford to make mistakes because there was enough money in it then to where you didn't really feel that like if something went wrong. It's like, it doesn't matter. We'll just grow more. That's not the environment that we're in today. And it's, since call it the inception of the industry, when it was easy to raise money to where it is now, it's gotten to the point where you have to be like very, very careful and all of your decisions need to be calculated. You really have to monitor everything you do. And so over the course of those 8 years, we've seen the decline of California. The market has definitely trended backwards, and we've had to make adjustments and moves to make sure that we survive. And they were all painful, and but they were all done for the right reasons. And I think that they were the right call.
Those elements are so important, right? Because the ego is involved, the personal feelings, the investment of the time, those kind of allure of the brand and recognizing how close you are to the customer. It's a really difficult kind of step back, but internalizing. But then the extraction element, I think, is so critical and sometimes gets overlooked because one thing I think that your team has going for you, you're loaded with a bunch of incredibly talented people and it's a very, very hard space. So like putting yourself up against these other processors, I don't think recognize how complicated and challenging running some of these machines are. And then having an organized data processing facility that tracks all these elements is extremely, extremely layered and complicated because exactly like you're saying, as California kind of compresses, you need to have a good grasp of your numbers are so you can make sound decisions rooted in data.
Yeah, 100%. The data element's a big one for sure. That's something that we've been pretty focused on. We're still working on how do we use this data to the best of our ability and try and stay focused on innovative practices to stay ahead of the curve because we're not the only group that's doing it. There's a bunch of other competitors out there doing the same thing. And it's gotten to the point where it's like, who can be the leanest and meanest and preserve margins and not make mistakes and be innovative in an environment when it's challenging to afford to be innovative. Like doing R&D costs money and time. And when you don't have a lot of that, we're still trying to find creative ways of like, how do we just make sure that we're still doing that to keep ourselves ahead of the curve? And, but when you do that and you run an efficient business, I think that you do end up getting rewarded with the right types of clients too. And we've been pretty fortunate to where we've attracted a lot of the bigger brands in California, a lot of bigger retail clients that rely on us for a significant amount of their concentrate needs, not exclusively, but a lot of them, and gotten ourselves into the position to where we're one of the biggest extraction companies in the state now. And being able to hand someone a data set to show them that like, here's all the yield data, the potency data, anything that pertaining to quality, and do that on a consistent basis as they're trying to build their brands, it helps them with predictability and production planning and all the rest too. So it's something that we definitely try and prioritize. If we're going to be solely focused on extraction, let's try our very best to be the absolute best at it. I guess it's a better way to put it.
And I think it's really amazing what your team has accomplished in terms of like kind of balancing both sides, right? Because if you're not cultivating and you're also working with brands, now the brands may have certain expectations from like strains, right? And so from a procurement perspective, like you guys kind of have to like be ahead of the curve and like manage both sides of that relationship, right? So kind of like talk us through those dynamics.
Yeah, that's a full-time job. We've got a guy, Evan, he's very smart. He works for us, that he heads up our procurement department. And that's one of the things on the data side that we've been kind of focused on collecting is, so we've got 8 years of data, everything from the micro extraction results off of whether it's dry or frozen material and all these different strains, which farms perform well, which farms typically have pesticide issues. And then once it gets into the extraction process and post-extraction process, we collect data along every part of that process. And so we have this massive data set that we're actively working on. How do we turn this into an internal tool for ourselves when it comes to like being able to show whether it's a client or us internally picking strains on what to plant, what not to plant. These ones perform well. Don't run that particular strain of runts because it doesn't yield at all in any one of these different fractions. And so those types of decisions. And we do get some of the clients, when you work with as many brands as we do, one of the things that we've got to be mindful of is that we're trying to help them separate their menus from their competitors. And sometimes their competitor is also a client of ours as well. So there's this like level of trust that has to exist between the clients to where we're not sharing formulations or whatever we're doing for the next guy. We're very strict on that. We don't, so we try and keep that very close to the chest between the client, and then also help them based on the data that we're seeing. It's like, you guys should use these 6 strains as your evergreens, and then we can help spot purchase material from different farms throughout the state for you guys if they need that service. Some of the more sophisticated brands are the guys that are a little bit bigger and do a good job on production planning, have farms and relationships of their own. And so we will bring material in from those relationships and switch the style of the agreement. We might do tolling for them versus selling them bulk concentrates. So, but yeah, procurement in California is a full-time job. It's a huge state. There's hundreds of farms, big, small. There's pesticide problems all over the place throughout the state of California. And so I feel like as an extraction business, it's almost like the most important part of the business before you even get to extraction. Because if you run a bunch of material that doesn't yield well or that has pesticide issues, you can quickly put your business into a bad position. And on the other side, if you do a really good job of that and you're constantly getting good yields and you have good SOPs on a way to raise the red flag when you went out, you grabbed 1,000 pounds of something, you brought it inside, and all of a sudden it's like, hey, this isn't yielding the way that we thought it was going to, or it's not performing the way, like, that's one thing that we've learned over the years is like someone needs to raise their hand immediately. And, now we do it digitally. It's in the system to where it sends out an alert that like, Houston, you've got a problem here, pick up the phone, work out something with the farm that works on both sides. So long-winded way of answering that question on procurement.
But like it's such a delicate balance, right? These brands it's so critical that they have a consistent product that they can produce, that customers can feel good and they can trust. And your team is kind of like the backbone to ensuring that it happens on a regular basis. And the trust disparity of ensuring that they're getting a good quality product that meets all these needs, that kind of is in their kind of acceptable range, starts with procurement, which again is part of the pipeline challenge. And I think sometimes people just forget of how complicated the whole entire supply chain is.
Yeah. Yeah, it's true. It all starts with cultivation. SOPs, how you harvest, how you freeze, all of that impacts our business.
So give us kind of like an inside look of the different types of extraction modalities inside. And then if a brand is interested in experimenting, is it kind of like a one-on-one, like, hey, we recommend this? Like, how does that work?
Yeah, so we have three main extraction lines that we focus on. We have an ethanol line that's primarily used for distillate production. We have 2 different hydrocarbon lines that are used for all the different various, fractions that come off of the hydrocarbon line. And then we have a pretty large solventless line as well. Same thing, whether it's fresh press or cold cure, vape ready, all the different rosin products that are popular. Those are the 3 main things that we focus. We have Gary and the team do spend some time on R&D, like messing around with different, whether it's like isolating things or minor cannabinoid type stuff that we do R&D on. But, truth be told, just being honest, it's like in the beginning, we found ourselves spending more time on that back when there was just a better environment, kind of what I would talk about at the top of the conversation. And as things have gotten tighter and tighter and tighter, we've found that we've kind of spent less time on that. And also our clients are less interested in that type of stuff too. They're more just like, I have to focus on what is selling. And these other things sometimes are cool and we'll do a little bit of that. THCV is being an example of that, but it's not like a core focus of a lot of the different brands.
You think that's just based on kind of the health of California in general?
Yeah, I do. I think if California was in a better spot and people were making better money, I think that changes. It's not that people don't want to do R&D and be innovative. I think that the industry absolutely wants to. It's like, how do you do that in an environment when you're like, I'm just trying to figure out how to make payroll and make sure that I get paid by all these stores, So, yeah, so seeing a little bit less of that. What was the other part of your question? You asked modalities, and what was the other one?
If a brand comes to you, if a well-known brand comes to you, wants to experiment, kind of grow and say, hey, we've got this strain idea, we want to come into this edible, does it work with like a one-on-one element where you're kind of leaning them towards like a different extraction modality, or is it a little bit like they tell you what you want, you produce the product in order to kind of help them and just say, hey, this is what it looks like?
Yeah, it's a bit of both. Yeah, honestly, we've had a few of the companies come to us with like ideas that they've had. I want to do a vape a rosin vape product, but I don't like the potency being so low. Is there a way for us to increase potency? And then we'll work with them on like, yeah, there is a few things that you can do that don't require you mixing it with distillate to help get there. And then we'll create that product for them. And then it's on them based on the cost of good, because anytime you do that, a lot of times you're increasing your cost. And then they test it in the market, figure out if like it resonates with the client, with the consumer or not. And then they come back to us and say, hey, this is working, let's do it, or no. So it's a bit of both. We help on the formulation side, tinctures and stuff like that. We've done a lot of that type of work in the past. And then sometimes it's just, I've got a brand idea. I don't want to think about it. I want you guys to basically just give me what you think are the top hits and how to do the formulations, and we'll do that for them as well.
The one element that I think about is like the brands that come to you and say, hey, we really want to do this Blue Dream, but your team knows it yields like shit. And then having to be able to produce the product, but then the numbers just don't make sense. It's such a delicate balance, because I think sometimes people just don't recognize how complicated and challenging from an efficiency standpoint extraction is.
Yeah. And they, most of our clients, they get educated along the way to where they understand like how we see it from our lens sometimes. But like, to use that example, they're like, why is this Blue Dream, $3.50 a gram when all this other stuff is $2.75? I'm making the numbers up, but it's because this yield is terrible. And if you want us to do that, that's what you're going to have to pay to make it, viable for both sides. A lot of times that quickly adjusts the decision-making process. Like, I guess I don't like that.
You're like, listen, Adam ran the numbers. He did the best he can. This is what it is. We wish we could get more out, but that's pretty much all it is.
Yeah, totally.
So take us through the investment then of expanding to the farm, because obviously we can tell like why it originates back to extraction, but take us through that process and why it's such a critical for the advancement of the business.
Yeah. So we, for the people that don't, so we purchased a farm. We spent 4 years in Santa Barbara working through the licensing process. Prior to that, I really tried to get Mendocino to allow for us to do this in Mendocino. And like, I was just banging my head against the wall with the board of supervisors. And it is what it is. And we just found that we're in Mendocino. We're an extraction company. The size of the supply chain does not support our business. And so we're going to go outside of the county and spend our dollars elsewhere. Santa Barbara has been probably, out of all the counties, they've been the one that's handed the largest permits. We found ourselves in Santa Barbara sourcing all the time. And so long story short, I found this ranch. It's very unique. It's a big ranch. It was a pocket listing that wasn't for sale. And when I saw the ranch, the way it's situated, I'm like, man, if we could get this and turn this into like a cultivation site that's purposed for our business, for extraction, it's going to make our lives a lot easier. So we drive all over the state of California today. We source from about 250 different farms. It's challenging. It's got, a whole bunch of headaches and inefficiencies that come with that. We buy about 225 acres worth of product a year. And so we applied for one of the larger permits and ended up winning this. It's a 187 acre LUP in Santa Barbara. This year was our first year. So 4 years later, that's how long it took for us to get through the licensing process. We've got roughly 65 acres ish going in. Actually, today I'm looking out the window at the tractor that's driving by. And it's exciting for us to like, just why are we doing it? It's to help streamline our business. It's to help simplify things. I still think that we're going to absolutely have to rely on a lot of the farming relationships that we still currently have. Like, that's not going away. 70 acres puts a dent in it, but it doesn't meet the total demand. And we'll expand into this over the next 3 years, and gets our cost of goods down, gives us an opportunity to offer a service, a better service to our clients. So go to someone like a Kiva or something or KSS that has like a portfolio of brands, and hand them the strain list and say, you tell us what you guys want us to grow, and that's what we're going to grow. And then we'll help them with the data too. Like, I wouldn't pick that one, and here's the reason why, but if you want us to do it, we will. So yeah, so it's cool. The ranch, it's considered a trophy ranch. So it's got 5 houses, a bunch of infrastructure. What I want to do is offer it as like an event space to our clients. Bring your team in, get them all excited, take them through the field, show them like, this is all of our stuff here, and do some fun, like horseback riding type stuff, shooting guns.
It's a major milestone. I can imagine 4 years in the making of how long that and how difficult that process was. But I can take a step back before you even started the investment and you ran some of the numbers, recognizes kind of what the total input needed in order to run the business successfully, right? Because one of the challenges you guys face is that if you don't have enough product to run through the system, you're not operating at your full capacity, which means there's kind of opportunities for improvement there. So I'm assuming those were some of the numbers that you ran through and saying, okay, we can help supplement this part of the business in order to help these numbers.
Yeah, 100%. Just reading the tea leaves and you know seeing the value of these different products declining year over year. It's like it's not rocket science. We're not geniuses. It's like we have to figure out how to get this product cheaper, right? So if we're running around buying pounds for anywhere from $20 to $50, depending on what it is, and we can cultivate those same pounds for $5 to $10. There's a real economic reason. Like, okay, why would you do that? It's just simple as that. And so, yeah. And there's a lot of other efficiencies that we'll get out of it too. So like when you buy material from so many different farms, it's really hard to dial in your equipment to squeeze the lemon correctly to get the right amount of juice out of each extraction line, right? And so by having larger blocks of material coming from the same spot, it's really going to help us with yields beyond just knowing the genetic and all that. I think that we're going to be able to kind of dial in. And honestly, to give you guys a shout out, we've been working with you guys on some of the tech that you guys are working on too, just to help us do that. So anywhere where we can get a little bit of an efficiency, whether that's through what you guys are working on or this other thing that we're working on or the field itself, it's just all of it. It all adds up. It's all important. It's all dollars being left on the table. And we got to make sure that, we're plugging holes anywhere that we can.
Yeah, that's the element I think is so surprising is that there's inefficiencies. And if your team isn't proactively looking to figure out how to plug those leaks as margin compression continues to come down, which we all can recognize we don't want it to happen, but likely will continue to occur, where can you defend and protect yourself? And sure, you can sell more product, you can increase your prices, customers don't want that, but lowering your costs and getting a better understanding of what those true numbers are and really locking in those numbers to feel good about it really helps the decision saying, okay, our margins are here. We know for anything more or less than that, we got some issues, but this is where we really want to be.
Yeah. You have to, I'm a firm believer that like you have to look at the bottom of the line numbers versus top line. Like we can't just say, well, we're selling oil at $1.50 a gram. We need to be at $1.75. So sales team go out and that's the new number because the market is what the market is. And if it's at $1.50, there's nothing you can do about that. It is what it is. So you have to look below and figure out like, okay, then how do we get more efficient and look at it that way versus raising pricing? Because as the market goes down, and Jesse was sharing some of the, California market figures, it's going down. It's going backwards. The state's raising taxes, the world's imploding, whatever you want to look at. So it's like, you have to look at it from that perspective versus like, oh, let's just raise prices.
Yeah, listen, the sales team would love to sell it for a little more, right? They would dive at that opportunity, but that's just not the factual case. And I think the lemon example is a perfect one, right? Because if you bought the lemon already and you're squeezing it and you're getting some juice out, is there more juice in the lemon to squeeze? Or can we make the lemon for a little cheaper so that the juice is worth a little less? So that's such an important thought process that I think sometimes gets overlooked given the chaos of the entire environment.
Yeah. And I think the answer is yes to both those. I think that there is more juice in the lemon. And, our industry's, this is new, right? I mean, it's been around for decades, but like at the scale and what companies like LEEF and other companies are doing now, it's still relatively new within a decade, right? And so as innovative practices get better and better and better, we are finding that like, we are able to squeeze this thing a little harder and get more juice out of it. But it's like, it really is like, you got to stack multiple ways to do that through data, through tech, through innovation, through genetics. And if you do that, then you see a 1-2% increase in your yield. And over the course of a couple 100 acres worth of material, it ends up being millions of dollars. So
yeah, it's a crazy difference. And I got to give you, Gary, a ton of credit for the type of expertise that comes in, because that's one of the areas that's really, really difficult. Some of the operators you have, Martin, Mac, Adam, they're incredible, like really skilled people. And I think that makes a big difference because sometimes that margin and those things that you're squeezing out only really happens when you have skilled individuals who understand what they're doing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely.
All right. So New York, talk to us about the plans to go there.
Yeah. So, We've been in California doing this for 8 years now, 9 years, something like that. And definitely feel that like we're in a position to where it's time for us to take the show on the road. The conversations and the thought originally started around just clients that we were talking to in California. A lot of our brand partners or clients they've already moved out of California. They're still here, but some of them are in every single medical or recreational market. They're in every single state. And they're like, man, we need a good extraction partner, someone that has the skill set that you guys have, because they're in all these different markets. It's a lot of these guys are new operators. They're where we were 8 years ago. And so, yeah, we had a bunch of conversations. We were able to circle up 5 of these clients, talk to them and say, if we were to move into this market, can we rely on you guys to be clients? And the answer was yes. And so we started looking at New York and New Jersey originally. And I started spending time out there just kind of getting a better understanding about 2 years ago. And we are at the point now where we've acquired, or we're in the acquisition process right now. So we found a group that was doing cultivation. They had a processing license. They realized that wasn't the area of the business that they wanted to start on. So we're like, look, we'll come in, we'll buy this license, we'll lease some space from you guys. You guys can rely on us to run whatever products it is that you guys need. So they've got Cultivation, gummy brand, and we'll help them with what we know about doing those types of products. Started reaching out to some of the different cultivation groups that we had relationships in California that are already out there as well. And just to kind of preemptively get started on the supply chain, because I'm a big believer, like if you're going to be a LEEF and focus on extraction, like don't move into a market where there is no supply chain or you don't have the relationships. It's like, that's a death blow, right? So we started there just to ensure that like, can we get the acreage that we need to kind of replicate the same model? Okay, yes, the answer is yes. Let's buy this license. So we are close to closing on it, going through the licensing process. And we preemptively moved a bunch of our extraction equipment into New York. So we spent, over the past 8 years, we've collected a boneyard of old equipment, stuff that we, had sitting in storage. And we're like, let's just send all this stuff out there and do this like as cheap as possible. And we're not trying to go in and do what we're doing in California by way of like the size by any means. It's like, let's go in and do something much smaller, be very selective and disciplined. And like, we're going to make this many products and we're going to sell it to these 5 guys. And that's it. We're going to call that as a win. We'll do that for the first year. And then we'll look at, expanding from there. But saw it as like, it's a risk mitigated way of us moving into a new market. And, long-term strategy wise, like back to, Kellen, you were asking me, what was the original vision? We're going to do it all and we're going to be everywhere. I think where we're at now is like, we're an extraction business, but I think the vision of the company is really, I do think that LEEF could exist in a lot of these different markets. And so if New York goes well for us, then the goal would be to like, okay, every year, let's try and move into one more state and do it with the relatively the same 5 group of clients that, so they've got predictability. And so do we as we move into these different markets.
The predictability aspect, I think, is such a critical one, right? Because there's just so much chaos on the outside industry, and the ability to have those trusted partners, those trusted relationships, and say, hey, we know your numbers are consistent. We know you're usually within this range. We know that if we hit these numbers, we can feel good about those decision making, which is a nice breath of fresh air, because I can only imagine some of these other companies who dove into this industry headfirst saying, hopefully we're going to make all these relationships, we're going to figure out extraction, and then we're going to figure out how to sell all these things. It's pretty much chaos.
Yeah. And I noticed that like, this is not me shit talking on anyone, because I understand. I've actually tried to like give a couple people some advice. These other groups that they're where we were in New York, there's a couple groups that they're where we were 8 years ago, and they think that they're going to do it all. And so they have brands and they're doing co-packing and they're doing extraction. And a lot of the, Cali brands that have moved out there are relying on those types of relationships. And what they're realizing is that like, when it comes down to it, and you've got 20 people rolling pre-rolls, and they've got their brand or the co-pack brand, guess which one's getting picked and packed and put into the market? And we made that same mistake. We've been there. Like, I know exactly what that feels like. And so we try we don't want to compete with our brands. That's an important part of our business. It's like, we're not putting our vape product into market, with a better product than yours. And I think that that's one thing that clients that we work with appreciate.
How'd you guys choose New York? Was there other states on like the menu? Is it just because Brian's there?
How do we pick New York? It came down to relationships that we had there. We just felt like it's probably the path of least resistance for us.
Okay.
We've had clients that are there. There's, a demand for concentrates are doing quite well in New York. They're doing even better than California. That's important. New York has outdoor cultivation. So for our business model, outdoor cultivation pairs well with the extraction practices that we use. So we can, if a client wants their product to be as close to the California product as possible in a new market, you've got to be able to same genetics, same cultivation SOPs. How are you freezing that product? How are we doing the extraction process? And so that's part of it. The market, the pricing of the products that are sold out there, they're higher than California now, but that'll change. Like it'll do what every other market does and slide backwards. So it's less about that. Yeah, it's really just comes down to like, where do we have relationships? Where would be the quickest way to success? And we felt like New York was the right move for us.
The reducing of the variables, like the unknown variables, like you said. But then the one variable that I want to ask about is like the input cost is likely higher because it's New York. And so how does that work through the model? Because I'm assuming some of your California partners like, hey, Micah, usually you guys give it to us for this price. And here in New York, it's this plus 1.5. So how does that, is it like an understanding that this is what it is because there's transparency, or is it a little more of like, hey, we got to figure out a better price?
Yeah, no, it's the latter. There's just an understanding. It's like all of this will slide backwards, right? It's, products are selling for X in the dispensary, which allows for you to buy live resin or distillate, whatever the product is, for Y, which means we need to go procure at Z. And it's relative, right? Like our revenue numbers are higher, our margins are the same. And that'll eventually all get adjusted as the movie plays out that we've seen in California.
Do you guys handle all the way to like packaging, like finished packaging for the brand, and they just come pick up boxes of like vape pens and packages? Is that how it works? Or
yes and no. So we do for certain clients. It's not a big focus of our business. It's one of those things that like we're going to do everything. In the beginning, yeah, we were like co-packing for all these different brands, and what we found was with co-packing, it's a thankless job. It's very hard, right? You got different SOPs with every different box and the different touches and stickers, and we originally thought, oh, that's a great way to keep our clients sticky to us, right? So they land all their packaging with us. The chances of them going into a competing, extraction company are probably smaller. So yeah, we should do that. And what we found was it's kind of the opposite, because if we mess up on their co-packing side, we can knock the concentrates out of the park. We load it into their hardware. Say they have a hardware issue with China. Well, now all of our products loaded in their thing. You got a problem. If we screw up on the co-packing side and someone mislabels something, we're slowing down their process of getting that product to market. And so we actually found it to be more harmful to our business than beneficial. Co-packing is like this big unmet need though in the industry. Like someone needs to knock that piece of the supply chain out of the park. And so what we do now is we do a little bit of it for a couple brands that do a good job of like ordering their packaging and stuff on time, because that's the other thing. If the brand doesn't understand that like you're working with China and you got to manage your own supply chain, and like if you don't get your packaging to us, we made you this product, it's now sitting in our inventory, it's supposed to go into your inventory and be out of here, and it's not because they messed up on their side or whatever the reason is. It's just a way to slow down the whole process for us to get our products out to customers. So long-winded way of saying we do it on a very small scale. It's not a big focus of ours. As we move into New York, we've been asked by everybody. Everybody wants us to do it. And I think that we're going to stay disciplined and not do it. We are having a couple conversations around, we've got a license, we've got space. Why don't we come up with some sort of creative way to where we give you the 1,000 square feet in our facility that you guys need, and you bring in your own staff and you guys can make your own widgets. We just, hand you the jars that you need for your products. That's something that I think would be, that could work well in a partnership relationship with a bunch of these different brands. And I think ultimately, a lot of them are finding out the hard way too, that there is like an element of that you kind of don't want to outsource to someone else, because if you've got momentum and you're selling, and you're doing $1 million a month, if someone screws up in the co-packing side, you've got a serious, you're throwing sand in the gears on your sales momentum. So owning that, I think, is an important part, even with these brands that are moving into market to market on an asset light model. I think that's an element that I'm seeing more of them want to hold on to that piece of the business.
How I want to stick with New York. When you're expanding out there, how do you feel comfortable with the personnel going out there to run the machines, to hit your efficiency numbers, given all the expertise that's out on the West Coast? How do you transfer that and the visibility so that the team continue to operate successfully and that you're not kind of going too lean?
Yeah. So a couple of years ago, we started with this process internally. We just called it our franchise Bible, and not the right term for what we were doing, but basically it was like, let's document every single aspect of everything we do, from the production. So all the SOPs around production, from the accounting side, the procurement side, literally, how do you do every facet of our business? And Gary and the team have done a good job of piecing that together and training our team in California on that. We've actually kind of tagged a lot of our employees to participate in the process so that there's buy-in and they understand how to read through all the processes. So I think part of it is, replicate it through our SOPs, but also deploy a manager too that is trained in California, and then put employees that we want to hire in New York through a training program in California first, so that we bring them out, put them up in a hotel. They spend 30 days, 60, however long it takes to where we sign them off like, okay, you're now LEEF certified, so to speak. And to where we have that trust that they're going to go run the business, not only just like making the product, but also just like, how do you interact with clients and how do we do everything? Like, and because that's what's going to be challenging for us. One of the challenges for me in my mind is that, like, how do you keep like the culture and like the client services and the customer service aspect of what you do the same in each one of these markets, as you as a leader and also the company starts to get diluted in bandwidth and you're moving into these different markets. And so we thought a lot about it, I guess, as and that's our short-winded way of like how we're going to do it. Like, let's send out one of our best guys to kind of graduate. And we've got really lucky. I mean, you guys have been to the team. We have some very smart guys that like really know what they're doing, and almost it's getting to the point where they're all so qualified. They're ready to like go graduate onto the next thing.
Yeah, you've got a really, really impressive team, but it's a difficult balance, right? That's the challenging aspect, is you're taking people, you're like, all right, this is how it goes in California, but in New York, it's going to operate a little differently. And there has to be a little bit of autonomy and trust that goes into it, that the decisions are still being made, the relationships are getting held with that same, and there's enough visibility as the state lines, get crossed, that everyone feels comfortable with how everything is performing.
Yeah. And I think the other way that we're going to handle some of that, just so that there's continuity, is like it's a small client Rolodex that we're going to, be working with in New York. We already have that relationship, right? We have a salesperson, a strategic account manager that works closely with that client already. Keep that the same. So it's not like a new relationship. And what we found is like most of the bigger brands, they have one procurement guy for many of these different markets, right? And so it's a lot of the same relationships. There's certain things, I guess, that we're not having to like recreate the wheel on. And we're able to use the internal team in California to like help with sales and finance and HR, all that kind of stuff in this new market.
So slightly switching gears, Bitcoin. Talk to us about the choice of it. And I guess the hottest question, which the internet really wants to know, is, are you a long-term holder?
My hodler? Yeah. Hold on for dear life, especially right now. I don't know.
Yeah, I didn't look. I didn't want to.
Yeah. No, I'm a big fan of Bitcoin. Yeah, personally, I'm a big fan of just sound money in general. I'm kind of a nerd on. I like reading monetary policy and like books about the Federal Reserve. And I have since I was a kid. My dad kind of turned it on to me when I started making money in the cannabis industry. My dad gave me this bit of advice, and he's like, son, buy gold. It's sound money. Don't just waste your money, and this stuff's going to be evaporated over time. And I think he was proven right. Gold was $700-800, I think, when I first started purchasing it, and it's somewhere around $3,000 today, and it should be a lot higher than that. Gold markets are manipulated pretty heavy, but based on like the M2 money supply, how many dollars have been printed since I got involved with gold should be much, much higher than it is. And so Bitcoin, for people that don't know what it is, Bitcoin is not crypto, or it is, but there's a difference between Bitcoin and all of the other crypto coins and assets, the fart coins and the meme, all that, the shitcoin type thing. That's different. And I think that it gets muddled up and it's confusing. People don't understand that there is a difference. So I think that Bitcoin is this new technology, and based on where we're at with the internet and these cryptology programs, it's this new opportunity it's going to end up being this new asset class that's going to continue to grow. And it might end up being part of the new monetary policy moving forward as well. So I started paying attention to it for about a year. I started buying it personally, not that long ago, honestly, but Bitcoin was brought to me many times over the years. And I always thought, I said no to it. I thought that Bitcoin was like some nerd thing that like people that collect Pokemon cards were into, like, and I might have been right, honestly, in the very beginning, but I didn't think that it was a digital form of gold. It's sound money at the end of the day. It's a way to preserve some wealth. It is volatile. It's all over the place. But so I'm stumbling on how I want to answer this. But do I personally hold Bitcoin? Yes, I do. Do I hold? Yes. I don't sell it. I haven't sold any Bitcoin at all. Maybe I've transferred a little to a partner or two, and I don't plan on it. I think Bitcoin's going to end up being worth a lot more money than it is today. And I think that at some point in time, I think that we won't talk about money in the sense of dollars. We'll talk about it in the sense of Bitcoin. So what does that have to do with LEEF? We're running a public company now, and I'm trying to figure out a way to shore up and improve the balance sheet of our company. And so there's been a lot of other public companies that have done this prior to us. And I started paying attention to this and reading about these different companies. And what I noticed is that, man, this strategy of buying Bitcoin and putting it on your balance sheet, it's popular. Bitcoiners are super into it. And you're getting a better return on your Bitcoin through public vehicles than you do by purchasing Bitcoin directly. I think before you even get to that, though, I think that like the cannabis industry has been marginalized by the banking industry. Asset forfeiture has been a thing, moving cash around the state in vans. And, there's a danger element to it and Bitcoin solves a lot of those issues. It's a lot easier to make payments to one another. And so we started off acquiring Bitcoin at LEEF through B2B payments. And we've got roughly 4 coins so far. And just, we kind of put it out there to the world that like, hey, we're into this Bitcoin thing. We're going to start accepting some payments. And what I'd like to do is take it a step further and through some sort of a raise, probably some sort of a convertible note, purchase more Bitcoin and put it on the balance sheet. Cannabis industry, it's been very challenging. As anyone that's been in this industry for a long time knows that like legalization has been brutal to this industry. The old days are over, and everyone's balance sheets are we're all taking hits and taking write-downs left and right. And I think that Bitcoin might not look like it today with where it sits at whatever, it's down from its all-time high. But I think if you look at it as a long-term asset that sits on your balance sheet, it's a way to strengthen your balance sheet. So you've got your P&L strategy, which we talked about, right? We're going to grow and we're going to extract and we're going to sell that product, and we do 30 million and we have our margins. That's your P&L strategy. How do you also have kind of 2 shots on goal and have a way to grow your balance sheet? And that's through Bitcoin. And it's never been available. It's a new strategy because it didn't exist before. And now that it does, I think that you're going to see a huge adoption, and many companies are going to go this direction. LEEF was just kind of the first in the cannabis industry that I'm aware of to kind of take a step towards it. And we'll see. It's like there's no guarantees. I want to do it. I believe that it's the right thing for our company. But if the market doesn't agree with me and we're unable to raise the money, it is what it is. And I think that we would continue to hold the coins and find another way as like we get into more profitable days, to take some of the profits, put that into Bitcoin and hodl, to hunker down.
Is that just part of like the core mindset from your perspective of we're going to continuously look for ways to improve, and the growth mindset element of, listen, there might be some opportunity to squeeze here, we're getting hit here, but maybe if we attempted this approach, this might be beneficial?
Yeah. How can you be an innovative company in a very challenging market? What are our options? What can you do? And like the other thing I like about Bitcoin, it's this uncorrelated asset that doesn't require any management. Doesn't like I don't have to, when you acquire a company, you got to hope that what they said they were doing is the case, and that the guy that, that your new partner doesn't develop a coke problem. And, there's so many different things that can happen that like can implode M&A activity and all that. And with Bitcoin, it's like you buy it, you put it on your balance sheet. And if you're a believer like I am, that it eventually goes up, every 5 years, it will be more valuable than it is today. It historically has a much higher chance of having a positive impact to your balance sheet than M&A in this environment. When M&A is damn near impossible for us, when your share price is down and everyone's got toxic debt and all the other stuff that comes along with it. It's like, so yeah, it really comes down to like, no different than I'm talking about like the extraction practices, like every little freaking thing that we can do to just get a little bit of an edge. Bitcoin's just another one of those little edges. That's what it is for us.
I love it. I love it. Hard pivot. Your favorite book?
I just finished a book that everyone should read called The Big Print. It's right here. It's called The Big Print. It's about what I'm talking about. I read all kinds of books about this type of stuff, but this guy, Lawrence Lepard, wrote it. And it's like the history of money, what's going on with the Federal Reserve. And I think that like when you're it's important stuff to know. And I think in our industry right now, I think that we've got challenging days ahead of us. I think that this gets worse before it gets better. And I think that the more that you understand this type of stuff and understand what happens when the Fed, implements QE and prints more money, it impacts your business. And when there's tariffs on China and all these things, it's going to impact your business. And the more that you understand it and can kind of see the train coming versus being reactive on the back end of it, the better chance you have of survival. So I recommend that one. I like, there's another book that I think is fascinating called The Creature of Jekyll Island. This guy, G. Edward Griffin, wrote it. And it's old. It's like, I think he wrote it in the 70s, maybe the early 80s. It's about the creation of the Federal Reserve and like the kind of conspiracy theory around how these 5 families, they all met on an island on the East Coast and like came up with this way of like, how are we going to get centralized banking into the United States? And I think it was the death blow of our country. It was the worst decision that we've ever made. And a lot of the issues that we have globally and in our country and in our industry stem from the Federal Reserve. So I think that that's another one. If you're into a very long, dry book, I'd recommend that one.
Any plans to get the Daredevil Jane band back together?
Don't pull up any images.
I have one, but I don't think it would show on my phone. I tried it.
Yeah, I was wearing makeup before it was cool for dudes to wear makeup. No, short answer, negative. It was fun. Like, while I played in a band for anyone, and we did a bunch of traveling, and got to play a bunch of rad shows and tour with bands and stuff like that. And so, yeah, my brother was in the band, and my brother's in Missouri, and our bass player is now a banker, which is wild. He's in San Francisco. He's a banker. Adrian, the singer, still plays music. He's got a band called Crashing Wayward. He's in Nevada, if anyone wants to give that a look.
Dream smoking session, 3 people dead or alive.
Oh. My dad, probably, honestly. I used to smoke weed with my dad when I was young, and he helped me out in the industry quite a bit. He passed away a couple years ago when he moved out to Missouri. So I'd probably say I put him on the list for sure. I feel like we have a few conversations that I wish that we would have had before he passed. But actually, Jesse told me that you were going to ask me this. So what did I write down? Oh, Miss Shindy. This is a guy that I worked with when I was a kid in San Diego. He was shot and killed in this industry. And I'm giving you guys like morbid stories, but I pick him. Just a good friend of mine that was in the industry a long time ago. He's not with us anymore. And then Marcus Aurelius, if I was to throw like a crazy one out there, I like the whole stoicism thing. I think I like I've read some of his stuff, so I'd throw him on the list.
1 year from now, what has changed?
1 year from now, what has changed with LEEF?
Anything. First thing that comes to your mind.
Bitcoin's at $200,000.
Let's go.
No.
Tell me something that's true that nobody agrees with you on.
Bitcoin's going to be $200,000.
I mean, there's a few people who believe that.
No, yeah, you're right. No, I think in the industry, when we first started going the Bitcoin route, I think that people were like, what the fuck what are you doing? And so, I believe I'm right. But not everyone agrees with me.
Last question. What single item would you do to fix the California cannabis market if you were in charge?
I would drastically reduce taxes. Yeah. There's so many freaking issues that it's hard to pick one, but I think that if taxes and let me give you an example. Our cultivation licenses this year cost $720,000. 1 year. It's an annual thing. You got to do it every single year. The same permit on the hemp side to do the same footprint, same freaking plant, same everything costs $900 for the same permit. And I think that if California doesn't start treating the industry like ag or just like any other industry, that we're just going to, this continuous decline that we're seeing is not going away. I think it's just going to get worse and worse and worse. And not because the market's not there. I don't think people are like smoking less. They're just not going into retail stores to buy their products. So, but I think that if we would to make a drastic reduction in taxes and licensing fees, that'd be a start. And then I've got a whole other laundry list of things that I would do after that.
That's a wild number.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's not even the whole permit.
So, Micah, for our listeners, they want to get in touch, they want to learn more. Where can they find you?
So we're on X, we're on LinkedIn, Leaf Brands. It's LEEF IR at leaf.ca would be a good one. Our website's leafbrands.com. I'm terrible on LinkedIn. So if you're reaching out to me on LinkedIn and like, man, this guy doesn't respond, I don't respond. I'm better on email. Shoot me an email. Jesse's here and he handles all that stuff. Jesse, what am I forgetting?
We'll link all up in the show notes. I got you.
Okay, you got it?
Yeah, I'll take care of it. Thanks for taking the time. This was a lot of fun.
Yeah, thanks, guys. I appreciate it.